Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to this session on adding evidence to Wikipedia. The session today is really, we're just going to start with a brief introduction to the Campbell Collaboration Wikipedia project. We also had a co-presenter, Montserrat Conde from the Cochrane-Campbell Global Aging Project, who was going to present on a very similar Wikipedia effort. Unfortunately, she is traveling, her flights were delayed, and she's not going to be able to present with us today. I do have a recording that she made in the airport, but the audio is quite low, so I think we're going to probably just maybe share that recording with folks who are interested, but I'll say a few words about that project at the end of our presentation here. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself and my colleague, Zahra. So I'm Sarah Young. I am a librarian, social sciences librarian at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the United States. And I'm also the co-convener of the Campbell Collaboration's Information Retrieval Methods Group. My colleague presenting with me today is Zahra. Zahra, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Zahra Premji, and I'm Health Research Librarian at the University of Victoria in beautiful British Columbia, Canada.
Great, thanks, Zahra. So as as a member of the Information Retrieval Methods Group, both Zahra and I have gotten involved in this Wikipedia project. And so we'll talk a little bit about how this project came to be, and then really spend the rest of the time in this session doing a training on how to become a Wikipedia editor. I will say both Zahra and I are pretty new to this ourselves, but it's something that really anyone can get started with. And the idea here is to encourage you to become a Wikipedia editor and join our project and our effort to add evidence from Campbell reviews to Wikipedia. All right, hopefully my slides will move. All right, there we go. So I think we can really assume that decision makers and policy makers will often turn to the internet for information to inform their work and decisions, in addition to considering, of course, their own experience and viewpoints of stakeholders and other experts. But it's probably in a lot of cases, these folks aren't necessarily familiar with Campbell Collaboration's work, and they may very well not sort of come across Campbell Collaboration reviews in the course of their typical searching for information. But we do know that they are very likely going to Wikipedia as a starting point for finding out information that helps inform their decisions. And so the idea behind this project and other projects like this is to really work to get reliable, high-quality evidence from systematic reviews into the hands of policy and decision makers by adding this evidence to Wikipedia, a place where they're likely finding information. And so it was with this idea that the Campbell Collaboration Wikipedia project came to be. So this started back in really early 2019 with this idea that there wasn't a lot of Campbell reviews mentioned in Wikipedia articles, and there was a lot of work that we could do to get more of that evidence out there into Wikipedia. This was established by volunteer members of the Campbell Collaboration's Information Retrieval Methods Group, and we had a lot of support from the Cochrane Wikipedia Partnership, which you may be familiar with. This is a larger effort by the Cochrane Collaboration to essentially do the same thing, get more Cochrane evidence into Wikipedia. And we also had support from Montserrat Conde, who's with the Cochrane-Campbell Global Aging Partnership. folks from both of those projects really helped us with some of the technical aspects of getting this project off the ground. And so essentially, we just kind of modeled this project after the Cochrane Wikipedia project. The idea is that this is open to anyone. Anyone in the world can join this effort. Back when we started thinking about this in early 2019, there were only 8 Campbell Collaboration reviews mentioned in Wikipedia. By November of that year, the members of the Information Retrieval Methods group started learning how to edit and started adding Campbell Collaboration reviews to Wikipedia. And then by April of 2020, in the early stages of the pandemic, we actually launched our project page. And at this point, we had 21 Campbell reviews added to Wikipedia. And so we're really, in some ways, just at the beginning of this project. And we're hoping with this presentation and with the edit-a-thon tomorrow, which we'll talk about shortly, we can really harness more volunteers to get involved and really get more of this high quality evidence into this very highly used resource. So this is the Wikipedia project page. You'll see the link there at the bottom. Again, it's meant to facilitate just anyone getting involved very easily. There's a lot of great training materials already online made available through Wikipedia. And these pages essentially walk people through the steps of setting up a Wikipedia account, accessing that training material, and then contributing to adding evidence from Campbell reviews to Wikipedia. We also have, you can see, a priority reviews tab here, and that has been, that's a list of reviews that was identified by the editorial teams of the Campbell Collaboration as potentially high impact evidence that really needs to get into places where policymakers and decision makers are looking for information. So let's see. In addition to setting up a Wikipedia account and sort of starting to add evidence, we're really asking folks to also join our project dashboard. And this is a really nice way that we can kind of track the impact of this work and the activity of the volunteers working on this particular project. This dashboard is a little bit deceiving because it essentially is tracking all of the Wikipedia activity by the volunteers. So if you're an active Wikipedia editor and you get involved in the project, you sign up on our dashboard. It's not just going to be the Campbell Collaboration work that you do that will be tracked. That said, it's a very nice way for us to sort of keep track of what Campbell evidence is being added as a part of this project so that we can sort of do a little bit of quality control and quality checks to those edits. So essentially, we just encourage folks to get involved. Again, we are, after this presentation, we'll be sort of diving into a training session. So if you're interested in learning how to become a Wikipedia editor, we encourage you to stick around. And then tomorrow, right after the closing plenary, we have a post-conference workshop, which is essentially going to be the edit-a-thon. So this is an opportunity for you to join us and try out these new skills that you've learned here today. And then if you're already an experienced Wikipedia editor, you'll learn more about the project and exactly what activities we're asking folks to do today. We'll also rehash that tomorrow. And just sort of as an FYI, tomorrow we are going to be essentially meeting here in the Hopin platform, but we're going to be providing a Zoom link for folks that want to actually do the editing. We think that's going to be a more interactive environment. And so feel free to join us here tomorrow, but then likely we'll be moving into Zoom for the actual editing. And I think that's more or less it. I do want to just mention, whoops. Oh, I had a slide that I just added at the last minute here. It's not loading, unfortunately, but I did just want to highlight the Cochrane-Campbell Global Aging project as well. The Cochrane-Campbell Global Aging Association focuses on evidence and information about global aging issues. And they have a very similar Wikipedia project, something that I think has been underway for longer than ours. And Montserrat Condi, who's involved in that, was very helpful in helping us get our dashboard up and running. And she was, like I said, she was going to present about that project, but unfortunately had some unexpected travel delays this morning. So, but I encourage you to, we'll try to get that slide working, and we'll share out the links to these slides so you'll have more information about that project as well. All right, I think that is it for our sort of intro. We're going to go ahead and dive into the training. Again, I'm just pointing out here that tomorrow is this post-conference workshop, which is really going to be the edit-a-thon. And again, feel free to sort of meet us here in the Hop-In platform, and then we'll be moving into Wikipedia. And I also just wanted to make some acknowledgements as well before moving into the training. Like I said, Jenny Dawson of the Cochrane Wikipedia partnership was instrumental in helping us get this off the ground. Thank you, Howard, for your suggestions on the reviews for priority. Vivian Welsh, I believe, suggested this idea in the first place. And Tracy, I see her on the call as well. She was very helpful in getting the word out about this project when it was first launched. And also many thanks to the members of the Information Retrieval Methods group who were involved in different ways in getting this project off the ground. All right, so we're going to move into the training. And Zahra, I'm going to let you take it from here. Do you want me to just click through and just say change slides when? Okay, no problem.
Please. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about why you would want to contribute to Wikipedia, and start off with, if you don't know fully what Wikipedia is, we'll get into that as well. So next slide, please, Sarah. So according to Wikipedia, Wikipedia is a freely accessible, multilingual online encyclopedia, and it is written and maintained by a community of volunteers. It has become the largest and most read reference work in recent times, and for many of us, it is the site we go to when we want to learn or explore a topic for the first time. And the foundational pillars of Wikipedia, which we will cover shortly, attempt to make Wikipedia reliable, and the community of volunteers and the ability to add new content at any time has allowed Wikipedia to stay current. Next slide, please. So why would you want to contribute to Wikipedia? Well, Wikipedia actually has its own article and reasons on why you might want to contribute, including things like it's educational, it's social, you're part of this exciting development, using open science, it's interesting to share your knowledge with other people, knowing that you can instantly edit and other people can react to what you've written. It helps others, learning how to write with a neutral viewpoint is a useful intellectual exercise. But more than that, continued contributions are needed in order to keep Wikipedia up to date and in order for it to remain comprehensive. And so Wikipedia relies on its volunteer community of editors to help with that. It's also an open access source, and so it allows reliable evidence to be found and therefore to be used for policy and practice. Plus, it gives you an opportunity to share your knowledge that you may have about something that you're an expert in. And you can share your expertise in 3 different ways. One is by adding those complex details that are relevant to that topic that you're very familiar with, or by critiquing existing Wikipedia pages to improve them, or by documenting the important people in your topic area. Next slide, please. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the policies and etiquette around Wikipedia editing. So if you are going to edit Wikipedia, what do you need to know before you get started? Next slide, please. So Wikipedia has 3 core content policies, and these are neutrality, verifiability, and no original research. So neutrality is represented by 3 things. One is that you contribute fairly. So this means that you don't state opinion as fact or fact as opinion, and you don't promote one viewpoint over another. So you want to represent all relevant viewpoints for the topic. Proportionality means you allocate appropriate weight to the different viewpoints. So for example, don't imply parity of viewpoints when that's not a true reflection of the arguments in that particular area. And the last one is to work without bias as far as possible. And this just means not using judgmental language. For verifiability, it really means that other people should be able to check your sources. And you really do this by including citations to reliable, authoritative sources. And finally, Wikipedia is not the place where you include original research. And no original research means that don't include material for which no reliable published sources exist. So all of the information and material you add to Wikipedia must be attributable to reliable evidence. Next slide, please. In addition to the core principles, there are other rules or etiquette within the Wikipedia editing community. The first one is that self-promotion is frowned upon. So don't edit Wikipedia or become an editor just to add your work to Wikipedia. The second one is don't use the platform to share your personal views or debate controversial issues. It's meant to be an authoritative encyclopedia containing facts and supported information. The third one is that just because you can edit doesn't mean you should rewrite a whole Wikipedia page. The existing pages are other people's work. So add where needed, but don't completely redo a page. One of the things that's available on each Wikipedia article is what's called a talk page. So the talk page is where conversation, debate, and discussion related to that page happens. So if you want to completely, or you want to add a new section, for example, or change some existing information, maybe float the idea on the talk page and see what kind of response you get before you go ahead and make wholesale edits. Also, if a talk page is really active, that tells you how many other people are really into this article and how many active contributors are already working on it. The next one is that your audience doesn't have your level of expertise on the topic, so you want to write in a way that your audience will understand. And a good rule of thumb is to assume that your audience is a high school level reading. And like any other work, academic or creative, don't plagiarize or infringe copyright. So this means don't copy and paste from an existing source. What you want is to paraphrase the important points and cite your source. And don't upload images or other media to Wikipedia that you don't own and have copyright for. Because once you put it on Wikipedia, because it's open access, it now becomes freely accessible to others. So when you're new to Wikipedia editing, you should start small with simple tasks until you get comfortable discussing on talk pages and then adding new sections or new articles altogether. Next page, please. So I mentioned talk pages in the previous slide, and you can see that on any Wikipedia page, or if you go to any Wikipedia article, you will see a tab called Talk at the top left. And if you click on that, you will see all of the discussion that has gone into building the page. And these talk pages are really interesting because sometimes a new section will be added and then it will be taken out. And the editor that took out the section will explain in the top page why that was done, so why a change was reverted. But you'll also get to see how recent some of the discussion around this page has been, whether something has already been considered in the past, who's involved, and so much more. Next slide, please. So if I've convinced you that editing Wikipedia is something you might want to do, and I'll admit, before I joined the project, I was not a Wikipedia editor, and then once I started, it's actually quite fun. So you'll need to create an account. Next slide, please. Which is a very, very simple process. So there is a create account link at the top right of the page. So once you click on that link, it'll pull up a form. Next slide, please. And there's really only 3 fields in this form, name, password, and email. So you can use whatever name you want, although Wikipedia suggests that you not use your real name, also that you not use somebody else's real name and impersonate them, and also that you not use your existing social media usernames. But really, you can choose whatever you want. And then you'll fill in the password field and confirm the password in the second box below that. And you can actually add your email, although this is not a required field. So you can become a Wikipedia editor without having a Wikipedia account associated in any way with your email, if you don't want that to be. So that email field is not required. But if you ever did need to reset your password, then you would need to have registered with an associated email. Otherwise, there's no way to do that. And next slide, please. And just like with any other social platform, there is a user page, which is essentially like your profile page, but not used in necessarily the same way as you might create a profile on another social platform. So you don't have to populate your user page, but you might want to. So if you do plan to edit in Wikipedia, it's good to declare any conflicts of interest, and you can use your user page to do that. For example, if you plan to use your account in support of a particular organization and their work, then you can include that in your user page. And it allows the overseeing editors to know a little bit more about your motivations. So to develop your user page, you simply start by logging in to Wikipedia using the account that you created. And then you click on your username, which will be at the top right of the page all the time. And if you've never created a user page, it will prompt you at that point to create a user page. And if you've already created one, then your user page will load. And just like with any Wikipedia page, your user page follows the same rules, so you can edit it at any time. And there's also a talk page associated with your user page where someone can leave you a message or anything like that. And next slide, please. All right, and I'll pass it back to Sarah to talk a little bit more about how to make edits in Wikipedia.
All right, thank you, Zahra. All right, now we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty about actually editing in Wikipedia. And I'm going to start with kind of an overview of how to make edits, and then I'll get into a step-by-step sort of overview of how to specifically contribute to the Campbell Collaboration editing project. All right. So essentially, once you've created an account and you've logged into your account, anytime you go to a Wikipedia page, you're now going to see some new tabs that you weren't seeing before. In particular, you're going to see an edit or an edit source tab. So there's essentially 2 ways to create edits in Wikipedia. One is with the visual editor, and so this is the edit tab. And this is kind of what we're used to when we're making, edits to any kind of rich text kind of document. You simply click into the text, you type your new text, and then you make use of the various buttons at the top of this tab to, say, create bold text or add a citation or add bullet points, similar how to how this would look in a Word document. And this is really what we're going to focus on. This is kind of the most user-friendly way of making edits in Wikipedia. So we'll focus on the visual editor for the rest of this training. But I do want to point out that one could also make edits using the source editor. So this is going to be the Edit Source tab. And this involves understanding a little bit about Wikipedia markup language, where there's a little bit of sort of specialized syntax involved in how you add things like citations or links in the text. It's not very complicated, but it's certainly more complicated than the visual editor. So again, we're just going to focus on the visual editor, but I just want to point out that there are just essentially two different options here. So when you first create an account, you may not see the edit tab. You may not see the edit source tab. It's unclear to me what sort of the default settings are. But if you do not see the edit tab, so the tab for the visual editor, what you'll want to do is go to your preferences, which is the link here at the very top of any Wikipedia page that you're on when you're logged in. This will take you to a whole set of different preferences that you can set for your account. There's a tab called Editing, and under that Editing tab, you'll see a drop-down menu that says Editing Mode. And this allows you to add what mode or what type of editing tabs are available to you when you are logged into your account. For me, I have both the source editor and the visual editor that come up whenever I go to a Wikipedia page. So once you've made those changes, you should be able to then access this visual editor. And here's where you can, again, simply click into the text, type your edit, and then add a citation. So as Zahra mentioned, of course, it's very important, to add citations. This is what Wikipedia is built on, is this idea of, credibly sourced evidence and credibly sourced information that a reader can go to sort of understand where that information is coming from. And of course, in the case of our project, we're very interested in getting people from Wikipedia into Campbell Collaboration reviews and evidence. And so we're certainly adding citations here. This is just a screenshot of how you would add a citation using the visual editor. You would simply click the Cite button at the very top of the page. This will pop out a little window. And it's quite simple. You can just add a digital object identifier. So that's that set of numbers that you'll find at the very end of a Campbell review URL. And that will auto-populate the full citation just from that number. So once you've done that, essentially you'll end up with your added text. And then in the lower right-hand corner here, you can see what this citation looks like in the references. And I should also say, feel free to go ahead and if you have questions, you can use the Q&A feature or the chat feature in this Hopin platform. We'll sort of keep an eye on that. So feel free to ask any questions if you have them. And then finally, once you've made your changes, you're going to save those changes and publish them to the public-facing Wikipedia page. Typically speaking, when you do this, you're going to want to create a small summary of what you've done. Unless you're making only, say, a change to a typo, fixing a typo, you really wouldn't consider anything a minor edit. So if you have added, a sentence or two related to a Campbell review, you'll want to just explain that you've added some information, say from a Campbell review or from a systematic review to the article. This is going to then show up. I can't remember if I have slide here. Yeah, this will show up in the revision history. So every Wikipedia page has a view history tab. And this gives you a view of every single edit that's been made to that page over the entire course of its existence. And so when you make that edit, it will go into that revision history so that anyone can come in and see that you actually, made that edit on a given day, and that edit came from your user account. This is also a sort of a useful place to come if you're wondering if anyone has, since you've made an edit, it's nice to sort of check up on those periodically and see if anyone has gone in and added to your edit or made any changes, and that this revision history can be a useful place to find that. So certainly as you're getting started with this, I know when I did, it felt sort of daunting, I think, to kind of go in and start making edits to this very public-facing resource. And so it's very nice because Wikipedia provides a sandbox with every account. And so this is just a private page that you can practice with. No one sees this other than yourself, but it's exactly like the experience of editing an actual page. So I highly recommend just sort of playing around in your sandbox when you're first getting started. You'll find a link at the very top of your page. Whenever you're logged in, you'll find the link to your sandbox. And you can simply just click into it and start making edits, adding citations, really doing anything that you might do in a typical Wikipedia page. Again, it's just a nice way to sort of start getting comfortable with that process. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment or look to see if there are any questions here. Okay, not seeing any. So we're going to move into really the sort of crux of our presentation here, which is about how do you contribute to the Campbell Collaboration Wikipedia project specifically. So one of the things we will definitely ask you to do, I mentioned this in the first part of the presentation, is that you sign up for our project dashboard. So when you go to our Wikipedia project page, there's a Getting Started tab, and there you're going to find a link to the project dashboard. So this is a quick process. You simply click on that link and sign up for the dashboard. This is just going to link your account to our sort of tracking dashboard, which will allow us to track the activity of our volunteers for this project. So once you click on that link, you're going to log in to the dashboard using the Wikipedia login information that you have from your new account. You're going to just click through the pop-up window here, and that's going to automatically register you for our dashboard. And again, this is just a nice way for us to track the activity of our volunteers. We can then see what edits are being made, do a little bit of quality control, and then ultimately sort of see how many edits are being made and how many page views there are to those pages, just to get a sense of the impact of the project. And you can see here what this looks like. For example, an edit was made where some evidence from a malnutrition Campbell review was added, and we can see how many times that page has been viewed over the course of after that information has been added. So again, just giving us sort of a sense of impact. All right, so we're going to dive into sort of a step-by-step for the Campbell Collaboration project. The very first step, and we'll go into details here with each of these steps, but the first step is to select a review that you'd like to add to Wikipedia, identify the appropriate Wikipedia article, write a statement or summary about that article that you intend to add into the article, and then add your content and citations to Wikipedia, and then finally mark that review as done in our priority reviews list, just so we know that that review has been added. So we're going to go through this step by step. So as far as selecting a review goes, like I mentioned, we have identified some priority reviews. There are certainly many Campbell reviews that are not currently in Wikipedia, and we do kind of have a side project that I'll mention at the end to sort of help us identify additional reviews that are not yet there. But for now, I think a really good place to start is looking at our priority reviews list. So this is a tab that you'll find again on our Campbell Collaboration Wikipedia project page. These are reviews that have been identified by Howard White and the editorial teams. And we've basically organized these by coordinating group. And so you might, for example, consider starting with a review that is in a domain or discipline that you're familiar with and comfortable with. I think that's a really good place to start. You'll want to choose a review that does not already have that sort of green done check mark next to it. And there's plenty to choose from at this point, so plenty of options here. You might also note that in this list, there are a few reviews that don't really have a target Wikipedia article suggested yet. So that's another really great way to contribute, is finding good, appropriate articles that really match the content of the review. So that's another way you can help. And then what we're going to be doing, and I'll provide a link to this shortly, is using an Etherpad. This is a collaborative open working document that we can sort of work in together. It's going to have a lot of useful links, including links to these slides, as well as a link to our project page. And I'll provide a link to that Etherpad in just a few minutes. So once you've identified one of the reviews that you're ready to work on, tomorrow during the edit-a-thon, we're going to ask you to make a note of which review you're working on in the Etherpad, so we're not sort of all working on the same thing. And then you want to just sort of understand what article you're going to be adding that information to. Again, we've suggested some target articles. Doesn't mean those are all of the articles that would be appropriate for a review, so you may find other appropriate places to put this evidence. You'll want to sort of give a little bit of a read through of the article that you're considering editing, understand what content is already there. Definitely also make sure that this review is not actually already cited in the article. That is a possibility, and so for sure just double check that before you go ahead and add this information in there. I would also encourage you, if you're fluent in languages other than English, consider adding content to some of the non-English language Wikipedia articles out there. I think that would be another great contribution to make as well. So once you have a sense of the article that you're going to be editing, you kind of have a sense of the review, it's time to write the content that you're going to add. I think a really good place to start here is the plain language summary. So every Campbell Collaboration review includes a really nice short summary of the key findings of the review written by the authors. And I think that's a really good place to start in terms of thinking about the information that you're going to convey in the article that you're editing. Personally, I really prefer to do my drafting in a different document, not in the live Wikipedia article itself, and then really just copying and pasting that in when I'm ready. So consider that as well. Again, I mentioned the sandbox. I think this is a great place to start in terms of, go ahead and draft your content, put it into your sandbox first and add your citation there. That's a nice place to practice. And then also consider, you can add different bits of information about these reviews. These reviews, as we know, are quite rich in information and evidence and findings. And so you may be making a broad statement about findings from a review, or there may be some very specific piece of a review that is appropriate to really enhance and build on something in an article. So be open about the different ways that you can convey this information. So this is just an example of an edit. You can sort of see how some information from the plain language summary was used to then inform a paraphrased couple of sentences about the review findings in the actual article. This is just a reminder too, to really make sure that you are adequately paraphrasing this content. You don't want to, copy and paste directly from a Campbell review. I mean, that would be considered plagiarism. So please make sure that you are rephrasing, rewording, rethinking this information in your own words. So when you've drafted your piece that you're going to be adding into the article, it's time to go ahead and add that information. And so we already went through sort of the process of going into the visual editor, clicking into the article and adding your text. And then, of course, you'll want to add the citation. So generally, best practice here is that citations should be placed directly after the period at the end of the sentence, or after a sentence clause if it's a very specific bit of information within a sentence that you're citing, without any spaces before that citation. And you can use the digital object identifier, which I mentioned earlier. This is going to be that set of numbers that is sort of tacked on to the very end of the URL for the review. And so these URLs are in our priority review list. You can get that DOI right from the Wikipedia project page there. So once you've made your edit, again, if you recall, there's the publishing your edit feature. Make sure you just note that you made some sort of edit. You added evidence from a systematic review. That will go into the revision history. And once you've done that, the final step is just marking at the very end, marking on our Wikipedia project page that you have done this review. You've added this review to Wikipedia. To do this, you actually do need to use the source editor, I believe. So essentially, when you go to the Wikipedia project page, you're logged into your account, you may only see the edit source and not the edit tab. So go ahead and click on the edit source tab. And it's a matter of just adding this very set of characters next to the target article that you've edited. So this is going to be a double curly bracket with the word done in between brackets, right in front of the target article. Once you've done that, it will then appear as this sort of green check mark, just letting folks know that this work has already been done. It's a helpful way to keep track of what has been done and what still needs to be done. You'll publish those changes and you'll see that green check mark. All right, so that is a sort of whirlwind overview of editing Wikipedia and also working specifically in this project. Just a few things to remember when you do this. Generally speaking, you'll want to kind of avoid using a 2020 Campbell systematic review or a Campbell review stated blah, blah, blah. You don't really need to do that. The citation is going to point people to the source. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Again, as Zahra emphasized, think about using plain and clear language. You're writing here for a lay audience, not experts. Ensure, like I mentioned, that the evidence is not already somewhere in the article that you're editing. That could very well happen, so make sure that that's not the case. And I would also encourage you to really look at the talk pages that Zahra mentioned. This is a really good way to sort of understand what the status of a page is. So there are times when there is a very controversial kind of hot topic that is being debated in a Wikipedia page. So a talk page is going to tell you if this is a very actively controversial or dynamic kind of page. If that's the case, you might consider just sort of holding off on editing that page. It's likely that if you try to make an edit, it will quickly be potentially changed or deleted in a very dynamic page environment like that. So check the talk pages and kind of get a sense of what's going on with that page recently. And then just note that, we'll be sort of keeping track of the edits that are made in the editathon tomorrow. So, go ahead and feel confident. We can go in and just check folks' work and make sure that, sort of best practices are being followed. But, have no fear and just have fun. And we're really excited that you're here and interested in contributing to this work. It's, I think, a really fun and pretty easy way to make potentially a big impact, and that we're getting really high quality Campbell evidence into the hands of people who are making decisions. So it's a really exciting project in that sense. So tomorrow, and I'm going to go ahead and put this Etherpad link into the chat here. So that link is probably just a great place, just the one link that you might want to sort of bookmark just for the next couple days. It's going to have a link to the slides here as a resource for you as you're doing this work. It has links to our Wikipedia project page. We have an activity handout available if you're just getting started and you really just want to give it some good practice. We have a set of activities that you can work through. We also have a bunch of resource links at the very bottom of the page. There's really great information out there about how to become an editor. And then there's a couple of different options for ways that you can contribute. So certainly by diving in and taking one of these priority reviews and drafting some content, great way to contribute here. But if you're not quite ready for that, we have other ways that you can contribute to this work. So for example, you can help us identify target articles for priority reviews. We also have a spreadsheet of Campbell reviews that need to be checked to see if they're anywhere in Wikipedia. If not, making recommendations about target articles for those reviews would be really helpful. And then if you are an experienced editor, we hope that you'll join us tomorrow and maybe be a resource for some of our folks who are just getting started. We do hope to have some experienced volunteers with us tomorrow. And so, we'll have plenty of folks on hand that can answer your questions and, troubleshoot anything that you might be encountering with, account setup or anything like that. So with that, I think we're gonna wrap up. This is just a few words about other ways to contribute to the project. We'll probably go into more detail about this tomorrow. And like I said, I believe we're going to go ahead and move into Zoom tomorrow. I think it's just going to be a more interactive way to work on this editing. So this is the Zoom information for tomorrow. Again, the link I put in the chat there has all the Zoom information handy. or you can join us tomorrow morning in this room, and we'll again share this information with folks joining us tomorrow. So I think that's about it. Zahra, am I forgetting anything?
No, I think that's it. I mean, the Etherpad link is available and the activity handout is already linked there. So if you want to get a head start and practice before tomorrow's edit-a-thon, feel free to go to that handout and try and do some of the tasks that we've recommended just to get you comfortable with crafting language, adding citations, all in your sandbox so nobody can see any of this practice that you're doing. Yeah, and we hope to see many of you here tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'll also say, if you can't join us tomorrow, you can certainly still help. I mean, there's no reason you can't sort of asynchronously get involved. All the information you need to contribute should be readily available there in the slides. And on the Wikipedia project page. So for sure, plenty of opportunity to contribute to this work. And I hope, hopefully we'll see some folks tomorrow.
Hi, everyone. Can I cut in for 1 second?
Yeah, by all means, yep.
Well, it seems that this session is ending when I thought it was supposed to be starting. I'm terribly sorry, but the link I got was 9 a.m. my time. So there was obviously a confusion. I'm so sorry about it. I was supposed to moderate. I hope you behaved. I'm going to ask people, Sarah.
We behaved. We got started.
Whether, but it's, I'm really sorry. I just wanted to, tell people that this is I thought it's a very interesting innovation to use Wikipedia to promote, sharing and access to knowledge products, and so I'm really happy that this is going forward. I think it's a great initiative. So again, I apologize to everyone for coming in so late.
Daniel, yeah, no problem at all. Sorry you weren't here, but glad you can join us here at the end. And like I said, we'll have the edit-a-thon tomorrow. We're going to rehash the training in Hopin for those who weren't able to join us, and move into Zoom for the actual editing. So maybe you can join us at that point. But all right, I think that's about it. We'll go ahead and wrap up a bit early here, but looking forward to seeing folks tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.
Session won't close by itself. You have to actually leave the session, and then only it will get closed.
Okay, yeah, I was just waiting to see if there were any straggling chat questions or Q&A, but
Take your
thanks,
time.
Ishika. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.